Brace yourself.
When Metal Gear creator Hideo Kojima was announced to be collaborating with Guillermo del Toro for a brand new entry in Konami's Silent Hill series, the community really shook. The Silent Hill series struggled to maintain quality after the departure of original developer Team Silent, and after a few messes, Silent Hills was really going to light survival horror on fire again. Resident Evil was meandering and semi-action, indie horror brought us cookie-cutter jump-scare simulators, so the community was desperately looking for the Silent Hill name to be revitalized, and horror along with it. The playable teaser of PT was one of the best things to happen to the horror game genre in ages. It was unsettling, it was visceral, it was alien, even to longtime fans of Silent Hill. Kojima's twisting mindscapes matched incredibly well with the body horror finesse that Del Toro was known for. It was AAA horror taking a look at the sensibilities of indie horror. The subtlety of games like Amnesia: The Dark Descent was finally given the budget it needed to expand. PT was AAA games finally figuring out how to creep players out again, instead of just giving us stuff to shoot. But Kojima and Konami continued to butt heads throughout 2015, eventually leading to Kojima's departure from Konami and the cancellation of Silent Hills entirely. PT's influence lingered on, even if the game itself was taken off PSN. PT influenced games like Layers of Fear, Visage, and the now cancelled Allison Road. While Konami's public reception continued to tank, Kojima's journey to freedom from Konami's grip eventually bore fruit, as he announced partnership with Sony to release a new game with his new studio, Kojima Productions. E3 2016 finally dropped the curtain on whatever the fuck the mad genius of the game industry was planning, and we were introduced to Death Stranding. Based on what was shown at the E3 reveal, it's a fair claim to say that Death Stranding is taking what was left of the now cancelled Silent Hills and creating a fully new IP from it. That was never an unlikely assumption. In fact, many even encouraged Kojima to do just that, myself included. Give the finger to Konami and just make Silent Hills under another name, like Quiet Mountain or something. But based on what we've seen, we can't even gauge if this is Silent Hills in a new form. The trailer doesn't show any gameplay and more serves to produce a kind of emotional pull between the player and a sobbing Norman Reedus. There also seem to be some shadowy, floating figures in the background, which certainly turn the gears of suspense amongst all the dead fish and stuff. All this speculation is churned further when, in an interview, Kojima remarked at a short story called Nawa by Kobo Abe, one of his favorite authors, often considered the Franz Kafka of Japan. Nawa, or rope, reads that man's tool of the stick is used to keep bad things away, while the rope is used to keep good things close. Kojima continued to compare the sticks to the weapons like guns and swords that players use to combat enemies in video games, while inferring that the metaphorical rope is rarely used in the same way. Death Stranding is Kojima's desire to weave that rope further, which the Kojima Productions Twitter has already implied will tie into some kind of social element, whether multiplayer or in a single-player contained context. But Death Stranding is also Kojima's chance to really experiment, and though it's confirmed to be an action game of sorts, I wouldn't put it past him to try something that even Metal Gear was too sensible to go for. Death Stranding has Norman Reedus, the crying infant, and plenty of death. But assuming that this is just more PT or Silent Hills isn't really the way I'd go. Don't let that dripping horror font fool you. There isn't any real reason to assume that Death Stranding will be a horror game. Most of what we've seen of the project is based on implication and speculation related to Silent Hill's ultimately failed development. Based on the metaphors of the stick and rope, along with Kojima's plan to make a new genre, I highly doubt that this will be of the same breed as PT or any of the Silent Hill games. In fact, a new genre already has me rolling my eyes, because come on, saying that nothing's ever been done before isn't that believable. In fact, it displays a degree of ego, though I won't deny that Kojima has earned the privilege to display that. And that arrogance is likely why many dislike Kojima and his games. He's probably one of the most recognizable figures in the gaming industry, and while I do enjoy a great deal of his work, I also know that he isn't a flawless person. I know many people who find Kojima's philosophy in game design to be overly artistic, and borderline masturbatory in how complex and labyrinthine he likes to make his games. He's a cinematic mind, for better or for worse, but I don't think that's the only thing to think about with Death Stranding. Kojima's best stories are never really that personal. They focus on the scale of global warfare, squad loyalty, and never seem to experiment with characters as people. I think the closest that Kojima has come to making a very personal story is the relationship between Snake and the boss in Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. But even that managed to engulf itself in politics and batshit insane philosophy. We're rarely ever given the chance to learn about Kojima's characters as regular people, which is why Silent Hills was going to be such a game changer for him. Silent Hill has always been a very personal series. Levels are constructed and designed around the characters you play as. The tortured psyches are given mangled physical form. Some people have said that Kojima has admitted that he wasn't entirely sure if he could pull off a new Silent Hill game in the same way as expected. But based on what he and Guillermo del Toro produced in PT, he seemed to have at least some idea. The blatant influence from films like David Lynch's Eraserhead are quite poignant, as Eraserhead's surreal imagery retains the theme of personal connections to one's kin. The crying fetus couldn't make that reference any clearer. Kojima is a fan of philosophy and Del Toro is a fan of body horror, so Eraserhead is an easy target for influence. Silent Hills was important because it was Kojima making a case that he didn't need the scope of the world to make characters and stories feel important. The way he settled into crafting what was going to be Silent Hills is a real left turn from the megalithic political machines of Metal Gear. PT was a peek into Kojima getting away from sky-high narrative ambitions, and despite the budget and publicity, it remained extremely grounded for Kojima. PT was unsettling both in its subject matter and the metaphorical themes that surrounded it: family violence, toxic home environments, and isolated anxiety in your home, a place that's supposed to be your safe haven. Death Stranding, based on what we've seen, is even less subtle about that desire to craft something personal. Norman Reedus sobbing while embracing this infant child illustrates a paternal connection between the parent and their kin, reinforced by the chord, which Kojima hinted is of crucial importance. And considering this is the most creative control that Kojima has had of a project in such a long time, I expect Death Stranding to be something extremely different from what we normally expect from him. Sure, it'll likely border on cinematic circle jerking, but thematically, Kojima is finally free to go beyond the series that he's built his name on. And this means that the aspirations are probably going to be redirected in an artistic sense. The folks at Sony don't seem hesitant in letting Kojima do his own thing, based on the publicity they've given his name alone. So we're sort of at a turning point. For the first time in ages, Kojima is going to be releasing a brand new IP. And the conditions of development are entirely different than Silent Hills or Metal Gear Solid. We have no idea what Death Stranding is or what Kojima is planning, but I have a feeling that this is going to be different, even for him.